Okay. Let's go. So this is like my second time recording this, so apologies if it's not with it's not with the same level of dynamism or enthusiasm that I had before. But I guess you don't know because I only know. But yeah, let me start again. Welcome to the channel, the Caves Light. Yeah, this is the first video. I don't want to give too much of a specific definition of what it's going to be because you never know which direction it can take. We're just going to go each video by video, but I'd say we're going to cover mostly mythology, symbolism, philosophy, literature, just looking at all these ideas. And it's just like a vestige for me a place for me to unload these thoughts because I've noticed in my personal life I just end up going on lectures I just end up lecturing my friends and family and on those ideas that I just have stored in my head, and I'm sure they're annoyed by it. So why not make an outlet to present and go through these ideas, and hope that other people out there that are interested in similar things also are attracted to it. Because I noticed, I'd say if you're aware of the channel Uber Boyo, I'd have to give credit to them for also inspire or Stephen of Uber Boyo he inspired me a lot to make this channel, because again I followed like Jordan Peterson, Carl Jung, Nietzsche, but see it like just it's good to have a community that even if you don't speak to each other, you know that other people are out there thinking about the same things. Like I've been thinking like imagine what it would have been like to be Nietzsche and have no YouTube. And he came up with these groundbreaking discoveries all by himself. It's no wonder he went insane. But yeah, so we'll be discovering those type of subjects I mentioned before. But yeah, in this video, we'll be looking at Saturn, its relation to humankind's concept of time, sacrifice, and mortality. We'll be looking at myths and symbolism throughout history that shows the evolution of this thought in the psyche of the collective. But before we begin, it's important to understand the world archetypically. Archetypes are shared experiences and patterns of behavior amongst genetic or social lineages. They are like the conditions required to be what a thing is. For example, all life seeks water, so seeking water would be an archetype for all life, and that feeling of being satisfied once seeing water is shared with all life. Giving birth to young and breastfeeding is unique to mammals, so a relationship between a child and a mother is an archetype for every single mammal that has ever existed, since this is impossible to escape. Even within the same species, there are different archetypes. For example, a woman and man will always need to have a relation with the opposing sex, so this relationship in of itself is an archetype. Carl Jung calls this the anima, which is the man's relation with womankind, and for the man, and he calls it the animus for the other way around. So let me just full disclosure as well, to be transparent. I'm reading from a script I've written before, so I'm just gonna go through the script, and I'll add things whenever I think it needs expanding. But yeah, so even within the same species, there were different blah blah. Yeah, we went through that. So the more you zoom in, the more niche the shared experience becomes. You eventually get to the point of what we would call memes, and this is the reason they resonate. Archetypes are just like memes whose age and origin are unknown. For example, like that moment when memes, these like more explicitly address this shared experience. That moment when I stubbed my toe, or that moment when I called that moment when I called my mother a teacher. Like, I've I've even been through that experience myself. So when I saw that meme, I was like, oh my god, someone else has been through that. Like, haha, funny, like crazy, like you notice it, and it resonates. But it's not an archetype because it is not part of the definition of being a human. Being a human doesn't mean you call your teacher a mother. Like, it's not part of the definition. Being human is being a social animal. Like, you have to be with others, otherwise you die. So being a social animal is an archetype of being human. Having a mother is an archetype of being human, but not only human, but also mammal. So that's the kind of wider archetype. And then there's an archetype for needing water, which is the archetype for all life, not only just mammals, and it also applies to reptiles and the other animals and plants. As you can see, like, archetypes is as if it's like layers, and you get layers of archetypes, and the memes are like smaller layers within the larger ones. Where was I? So and then memes, like, now they're even more like abstract, and they went from like that moment when, which like explicitly stated the exact experience, to like now they're more abstract, but it still requires a shared experience for the memes to work. For example, a lot of memes might be ironically referring to other memes that we all saw in 2012, and enough people saw them in 2012 that it allows for it to be ironically like memeified, because it's now addressing the shared experience of the shared experience, which the original shared experience was the calling your teacher mother. You could think about the archetypal space in terms of a Sims game, which the collective unconscious / self is playing. All our egos are Sims within the game, unaware that there are ways to play for our character to succeed best. So this is us right here, this fella. It's like he's loaded up. Him being loaded up is akin to us being born, for example. When we're born, our ego, let's put that up. When we're born, our ego thinks it's learning everything from its birth. Like, that's at least what we think. Like, it seems that way. It seems like everything we've learned so far is what we have learned ourselves from our birth, and we've come with no prior knowledge, and so we're just going along, like we're just in the matrix. We're in it. We're just in the game. We are in the matrix. We don't see beyond it. But this girl right here, she's on this computer all day. Like, she's played this game for probably like 240 hours past couple months. But yeah, she's this is the collective unconscious. Every time we are born and live our life, that's just her playing a 1-hour session. And she remembers each and every time when she goes back to play what mistakes she made before, how she could improve, which patterns of behavior of playing, which strategies of playing the game work best. And she passes that knowledge through that controller, which is our actions, which we're reacting to, which is causing our actions. We're reacting to symbols, to myths that are getting laid down, and they get like where was I in the script? You could think about it. All our egos are Sims within the game, unaware that there are ways to play for our character to succeed best. However, the player, the collective unconscious, has played the games many times and has accumulated information from all the iterations that they've played / our lives. They can then apply this through their controls to the sims within the game. So imagine, I think a good image of this is, imagine, okay, so we can say having children, that is scoring a point in the game of life. I think that would be an Darwinian, agreeable thing, true thing. Having children, that is a point scored in life. So for us to get to that stage, to have a child, a man's going to need to court a woman, mate, until they're partners, until they have children. So you have to act in a certain way. You have to exercise a pattern of behaving to reach that point you have to exercise a pattern of behaving to go down the route of where you're able to have a child with a woman. So for example, the unconscious, so you might see a beautiful woman, and then that woman matches the archetypal woman. So that's the collective unconscious in all its iterations. It's noticed that this type of woman with this type of figure, with these type of proportions, is meeting certain symmetry and certain just requirements that you're unaware of, but the collective unconscious deep down in you, it's aware of these things. So it notices that. It's okay, and then it acts as and then you're basically casted, a spell is cast over you, and then you're driven towards wanting to talk to that woman, so that you can then go to act in a certain way, so that you can score a point in the game of life. And then that's just one example, and it's the control is the archetypal symbol of a woman, but it doesn't have to it's meeting certain mathematical requirements, and then that's the control getting clicked, and then the action is you go talking to her, you flirting, and so that the end result and the point scored in the game is then having a child and passing on offspring, passing along offspring, I don't know, procreating. So that's just one example, and that's one example of pattern behaving for a certain result. But there's other patterns of behaving, and the one we're going to be looking at today is time. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. So here are some quotes from Jung to just further illustrate his ideas, because I did not think this up. I did not create these ideas. I wish I did, because that is a mind of a genius to have such I don't know. I just thinking in an archetypal way. It really does. It lets you see the unity and the commonality between not only fellow man, also with animals, even with plants. It allows you to see the world in a divine, it sounds so crazy, but it allows you to see the world in a more divine way, because when you look at divine images or images of divinity, it doesn't need to be historically accurate or that exact person that it was real, because you know that it's real. Yeah, you know that it's real. Even you know it's real without it being historically accurate, because everyone has experienced that has ever lived. For example, the mammalian archetype of having a relationship with a mother, a symbol of that archetype could be a divine mother and child, which could be Mary and Christ, and baby Jesus. Now that is a symbol of the archetype, but the archetype within of itself is everyone that has ever lived has had a mother, but a symbol of that is Mary and Jesus. And again the reason why a mother is an archetype and it's impossible to go without, because mothers are the ones that are pregnant, and they're like, you're the one that gives, they're the ones that give birth, and like a father can leave, so it's not like, it's just not an archetype. But yeah. So how does an archetype come to? Oh wait, let me just go through these quotes, because he illustrates, Jung illustrates the points better than I can. And so first of all, there is good reason for supposing that the archetypes are the unconscious images of the instincts themselves. In other words, they are patterns of instinctual behavior. An archetype is something like an old watercourse along which the water of life flowed for a time, digging a deep channel for itself. I love that one. So the next, the collective unconscious consists of the sum of the instincts and their correlates, the archetypes. Just as everybody possesses instincts, so he also possesses a stock of archetypal images. The collective unconscious contains the whole spiritual heritage of mankind's evolution, born anew in the brain structure of every individual. And I think that last quote is if you want a very direct way of saying like God is within you, I think that is it's a very rational and based way of looking at God. So yeah, so how does an archetype come to be? How do they go from an unconscious intuition to a conscious intention? An answer can be found in the observation that it's possible to understand something before being able to articulate it. Think about the feeling of love. We all know what it means, and there are no doubt when we feel it, but ask someone to give a definition of it and they'd struggle. At some point, thousands and thousands of years ago, man came across the inkling that sacrificing the present is beneficial for the future. This likely came before the ability to read or write. So how would they have preserved this idea for future generations to benefit from this knowledge, from this insight? So yeah, here we are. A reliable. So, what? I'll give you a moment. What do you think? What do you think could it be? Try to figure it out. No luck. Well, a reliable way would have been through mapping these feelings, ideas onto the night sky. Us moderns, we're detached from the sky. We have no understanding. Like it would have been such a big part of life for, I don't want to say primitive man, but early man. It would have been a huge part of life. Ever since you're young, like the stories getting told, like we're distracted with, we don't even look at the sky, we just look at a black screen that makes light in red, green, blue pixels. And but yeah, like so we're just distracted all the time. But you gotta think like how majestic the sky must have looked. And after, like when they're hunting, they tell it after a great hunt, after like a dramatic event, they gather around the fire as a tribe and tell these myths amongst each others, and they like use the stars to like and other objects in the sky. They use the stars to pinpoint these myths onto. And Uber Boyo, he inspired this idea. Like he said, like you can like think of the sky like as a desktop, and it's like it's like folders you store stuff in, and like each like Sirius, for example, like or Saturn or Venus, like they associate different ideas and thoughts with, and myths that are taught, like expressing these ideas, not explicitly, but the themes of them are expressing these ideas, and they're associating those myths that are expressing those ideas with certain stars. And it's like, yeah, it's like they're storing, it's like the unconscious, the collective unconscious is like helping itself make markers, because like obviously one person can die, but the collective unconscious will remember through the stars, because the stars are permanent as as I think I'm saying in the script, but I went off course now. So, reliable way would have been mapping these feelings, ideas on celestial objects in the sky. Many reasons for this. One being that the sky was the most constant thing around. It moved in predictable patterns. Hunter and gatherers did not have permanent settlements and were always chasing herds or wherever, wherever the foraging resources were. So they did not have permanent settlements, and nature around them was always changing. So you couldn't transfer generational knowledge through like a local tree, for example. Because of the same reason, stars were a useful tool for predicting seasons. Again, like, you can map out the year through the stars, and it gives you like a good marker of when you should be planting, and it would have been important for early agriculture, which again is very time sensitive, and if you're a society, if your culture is dependent on agriculture, getting that wrong, that your society is dead. So but also the sky would have been useful for navigating. Like, we can't underestimate that. Imagine you were lost and you had the stars to guide you back to your tribe. Like, you'd be thankful to it. I don't know. The sky was really important. So it's not trivial. So it's not a trivial thing, like, to think that these grand concepts that like formed our species were mapped onto the sky. Like, and you got to think the people that survived are us. And they like these stories and things, like, they might sound funny now, but they could have been the difference between a tribe that died, and we don't hear of their genetics because they died off, and us who ended up prospering. And like, literally these myths and stories could be the difference behind it. So the celestial object we'll be looking at today, where is this? Is Saturn. Looking at the myths attributed to it and ideas attributed to it. Again, I don't think this is Saturn itself, but it's just a show. Like, this is what they would have done. They would like picked out a spot and it's like, yeah, today, like, let's tackle that. So the Sumerians / the Babylonians worship Saturn. The deity they attribute it to were Ninurta / Nisroch. Ninurta, so this is one of their myths about Ninurta, and it says Ninurta confronts the Anzu and shoots it with his arrows, but the tablets of destiny has the power to reverse time, and the Anzu uses this power to make Ninurta's arrows fall apart in midair and revert to their original components. The shaft turns back into canebrake, the feathers into live birds, and the arrowheads return to the quarry. Even Ninurta's bow returns to the forest, and the wool bowstring turns it into a live sheep. Ninurta calls upon the south wind for aid, which rips the Anzu's wings off. Ninurta slits the Anzu's throat and takes the tablets of destinies. He's then rewarded and praised by all the other gods, but is asked to return the tablet of destiny. He resisted at first, but in the end, he returned it to his father. This myth is expressing that the nature of time and how the proper nature is linear, otherwise chaos ensues. Again, like, the antagonist is the one that is meddling with time, so is the one getting put in a bad light. So it shows that the proper nature, how it's supposed to be, is linear, otherwise chaos ensues. So through our rational eyes, this seems obvious, and the story is just a long way to explain the laws of cause and effect. However, for us to get to this point of deeming it obvious, stories like this would have been useful in embedding the concept in the collective conscious. Also, they would have been much more easier to recite and remember than just a string of mathematical formulas plotted onto a light in the sky. So, in another myth, when Ninurta organizes the world using the stones from the warriors he has defeated to build the mountains which he designed, so that the streams, lakes, and rivers all flow into the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, making them useful for irrigation and agriculture. This is not only promoting the nobility of selflessness in battle and the potential rewards one can receive from defeating the opponent, but also marks Saturn as the deity to which the practices of agriculture and irrigation owes existence. So you got to think, battling is one of the most it's one of the most obvious like displays of sacrifice, illustrations of sacrificing, because when you go to battle, and if you're going to battle well, you have to go into it with already having you've put everything on the table, and everything being your life. You've got to battle as if you've already made peace with losing your life, so you're putting everything, all that there is, which is your life, you're putting that at stake to have a potential of growing your tribe, making sure that your tribe doesn't get extinguished by the enemies. And so you're sacrificing your present for the future of not only yourself, but your successors. So in the same way, again, and this is archetypes are amazing, because you don't need to imagine yourself as the warrior to have gone through this. You're going through the same thing. So the way that the warrior is sacrificing all that there is, which is their life, is the same way when you're at work. They say all that there is the present, right? I mean, because that is true. All of potentiality is getting manifested in the now. So anything that you really desire, in your heart, you could do. If you wanted to run around in the middle of the street naked, you could do that if you wanted to. But you're sacrificing following your instincts. You're sacrificing the now, all of the potentiality of the now, to make it, to manifest it into this something that you don't want to be doing. Say you're at a mundane job or something. So you're sacrificing all of that potentiality, all that there is, the same way all that there is for the warriors, his life. You're sacrificing all of that to have stability in the future, because you're aware of your fragility in this world and your vulnerability. So, and that's something very rare. That's something that seems unique to humans, and the story of Adam and Eve shows that. As we see, at dogs or your cat, they don't have savings. They'll eat until they're full, until they can't eat anymore, and then as soon as they can eat again, they'll eat until they're full. They have no they're conscious but not self-conscious. And so this sacrificing your life to fight in a way that leads to prosperity in the future is, again, it's similar to us. The way he's sacrificing all that there is his life, the same way we're sacrificing all that there is, which is all of the potentiality that could happen now, into doing something boring, so that we can have a prosperous future, stable future. But so Ninurta also appears as Nisroch in the Hebrew Bible, where an Assyrian king is killed by his two sons in the temple of Nisroch. This narrative also represents the entropic nature of time. It's an archetypal reality that sons will take over their father, in the same way death takes over all life. And understanding you're not invincible allows for you to plan. The Assyrians were a war-loving people that gathered many enemies, so their gods became vilified by subsequent civilizations. The fact this act takes place in the enemy's land / the Assyrians suggests that this isn't of a divine nature and an earthly lesser one. So yeah, it shows that the laws of entropy applies to this realm, not the not the heavenly one, the spiritual one. Nisroch also appears in Milton's Paradise Lost as one of Lucifer's demons. He advised Lucifer during the war against the angels that they should create a weapon that allows them to feel pain, just as the demons do, as this halts morale. Again, this addresses the decaying nature that being an embodied spirit entails. It's easy to be moral when you don't have the limitations of body and time holding you back, and that's why being human poses a problem. If we didn't need to satisfy our needs, we could dedicate our whole time being good, and therefore we'd be angels. But we can't ignore the pain an empty stomach gives you, so despite wanting to be good, a man might have to make decisions that he doesn't want to make. So if you're in a satiated state, moral decisions becomes easy. That's why in Brave New World, it says, Huxley says, you can carry half your morality in a bottle of Soma. Morality can't be measured when nothing is at stake. But instead of the word morality, let's say modes of being that allow for civilizations to prosper in the long term. It's hard to treat others nice when you're hungry, and this is human dilemma we must overcome. Since we're aware of this paradox, we must plan to ensure we don't feel that pain, so that we can treat our tribes like brothers and build society. So yeah, like, because we understand our predicament of having to satisfy our needs, we have to make, like, if we're going to grow society, this is going to become more of a problem, because we're not going to be able to sympathize with others. We're going to have to prioritize our fellow man's needs. And yeah, and it's, again, this seems like obvious, but this is like this, the unconscious just affirming these ideas to itself for us to get to this point where we are in the society we are now. But okay, so the Greeks seem to use Nisroch as a foundation for their deity ruling over Saturn, Kronos, the god of the harvest, the god of time, bearing a sickle axe. It's interesting how the characteristics became more focused on agriculture rather than warfare, following the shift from Assyrian to Greek culture. He's the god of time, and is where we hence get the words chronic and chronicle from. The myth of Kronos follows a similar scheme of father-son dynamics, and Kronos was told that he'd be overthrown by one of his sons, just as he had overthrown his father Uranus. To prevent this prophecy from becoming true, he ate all of his children. However, one managed to escape this fate, Zeus, and he then overthrew Kronos. Here again, the all-devouring force of entropy is evident in this mythology. Evolution is us getting devoured by the babies we produce in the most direct sense. Trying to avoid this, as Kronos had done, leads to failure. If he had oversight beyond his reign, instead of being a degenerate and eating his own children, he could have worked towards building a better future and have been remembered as one of the heroic gods rather than a villainous one. But him being the villain is necessary to convey the message of the myth. So, after the Roman conquest of Greece, they adopted many aspects of Greek culture as their own, including their gods. They transposed the characteristics of Kronos onto their deity, Saturn. The Romans seem to have a more positive perception of Saturn than the Greeks did to Kronos. Instead of, as you can see, he looks much better than Kronos here. But so instead of time being this all-devouring force, it could be something to be bargained with, since the law of cause and effect allow for planning. The Romans were vastly more skilled in agriculture and city planning than their Greek predecessors, and this is clearly evident in the Rome being a 1 million-man city at its peak, a population centre not to be rivaled until 19th century London. This veneration of and respect for time and their god Saturn can be seen in the fact that the temple of Saturn was also their treasury, where they stored their gold. And money is one of the concepts most dependent on the understanding of time. and sacrifice in many ways. Firstly, you must sacrifice the present to earn it. It allows you to accumulate wealth from your past, and it requires a belief by most that the future exists or is worth living for. Otherwise, everyone will just stockpile things and the economy will go to shit. So, so the success in planning could be, just look at these remains, like they're still there in Rome today. It's actually amazing. I really want to visit. And these columns on the remains picture on the right, those are these behind right there. You can see those two, and then that one, that's that two, and then one. It's amazing. And again, it just goes to illustrate my point that these people, they thought long term. I don't think our buildings are lasting this long without maintenance. Not a chance. And these buildings are in the center of Europe, such a big population center, where so much has happened. Think about how many wars have come, how many plagues, how many earthquakes, especially in Italy. Like, it's creating is still standing, or parts of it, but still amazing. So the Romans also held a festival for their deity Saturn. They also held a festival for their deity Saturn, Saturnalia. It ran annually mid-December, during which public feasts were held, public offerings to the gods at the temple of Saturn, and again an expression of the concept that sacrificing for the future is good. Gambling was permitted, and role reversals, where the king would act as a slave and the slave as a king. This all seems like an expression of the unification of opposites, which is part of the archetype of transformation. In this case, from one year to the next, it's like burning the wood to prevent a fire, or it's like having to bend down low to jump high, or if a tree wants to grow high, its roots needs to be deep, or with an electromagnetism, positive and negative makes electricity. So the festival became what we know as Christmas, slowly from when the empire became Christian following Constantine's conversion. The celebration of Christmas took a more historical orientated approach, looking at the story itself. It is based on the birthday of Jesus, whose birthday became the literal starting point of time for the Western world, following its change in 6th century from the previous calendar, beginning at the founding of Rome, though this change took a while to take root. It could be possible to say that Rome's relation to time became more reflective and projective and less present in the moment. This would make sense considering how overstretched they were even by the time of Constantine, and a more conservationist than conquering mindset needed to be adopted. It's interesting to note that Christians also tend to sway to the more politically conservative side. So in a weird way, conquering is liberal since it's expanding borders, and the liberal festivities of Saturnalia were just a microcosms, and were just a microcosms of the macrocosms. The rituals embracing the other is like the empire embracing the barbarians. Christmas did not embrace the celebration of opposites anymore, like Saturnalia had done in the glory days. Instead of affirming itself with its opposites, it repeatedly revisited a specific date in the past. Society became stale, and the decline of the Roman Empire began. However, society's shift of focus from the present wasn't only towards the past, but also towards the future. The Christian story emphasizes the afterlife and perhaps allowed for a more transcendental thinking that allowed for people to rise beyond their basic instinct and create a more moral society, meaning a more functional at scale society. That's what I mean by moral. We find allusions to the entropic nature of Saturn in the Christmas story itself. It's interesting how the birth of Christ was transposed onto Saturn. It could have easily been Easter. Wait, let me think I've missed a couple. I should have had this slide on before, but yeah. and we see Constantine's conversion, his vision, and this is just a generic Christmas picture. Yeah, this is the nativity. So it's interesting how the birth of Christ was transposed onto Saturn. It could have easily been Easter that was celebrated on Saturnalia instead. This could be because being born means being incarnated, means being put into flesh. So think about chili con carne, which just means meat. And incarnated is like just the same. So, and then if you're put into flesh, it means you are subject to the entropic laws of Saturn, as everybody dies. But the moral of the Christian story comes from the death and resurrection of Christ. It doesn't come from the birth of Christ. So the resurrection of Christ is the spiritual side to the story. So therefore it couldn't have been transposed onto the Saturn side because that's not the laws of this world. That's not the laws of cause and effect of this matrix of entropy. That doesn't belong to this world. That the resurrection, but being born belongs to this world, and that's why it automatically went Saturn. And again, I don't think none of this is conscious. I just think it's like for some reason the unconscious is like pinning these ideas about this world and this matrix onto Saturn, and it's like automatically magnating towards there rather than anywhere else when it comes to assigning these ideas. I don't think this is I don't think most of this is conscious. Like it's happening automatically. So yeah, the high principle can also. So if all these myths, and again, it's interesting how with Christmas also the unconscious is also like now it's Saturn, like Saturn and Santa, like it's just an anagram of Santa. It's weird how like why did Santa come, like it's like we try to get away from Saturn in like the Christmas story with Jesus Christ, and we try to get away from Saturn, but the unconscious the collective unconscious like puts in like, now why is Santa now associated with Christmas? Now like that came out of nowhere, and it's just interesting how Santa, Satan, Saturn sounds very familiar, like sounds similar. So it's just interesting how like we try like there was like Saturnalia, we tried to drift away from it for a while, no really Saturnian symbolism, and then Santa Santa comes along, and it's like stuff like that. It's like, do we consciously do these things, or do they just get unconsciously selected like back into place? It's very weird. So yeah, if all these myths, practices, monuments related to Saturn are like controls from the collective unconscious directing us to act in the game, more aware of time to be better at the game, then could specific numbers and sequences be the code that goes through the computer once the button is pressed? That's an interesting thought. So say, okay, so we've gone from the warrior with the Babylonians and the Sumerians. We've gone to the Greeks with their concept of time, with their analogy of it, with their story of Zeus and Kronos. We've got the veneration of time in Romans. Like we can see, like it's evolving. It's so slowly evolving over time, ironically. And so like you just got to think, like, so when she started, she was like quite an amateur. This girl playing, she was quite amateurish when she was starting playing, but now she's getting more sophisticated in her skills. Like she's becoming a sweat basically, and yeah, it's like, and like as she's becoming a sweat, like her conceptions of times are becoming more abstract and whatnot. But yeah, but like, basically all the symbols and myths, they're basically the control. They're basically like the clicks on the controller. But what if think about this, what if the collective unconscious, she's like, so the collective unconscious is like driving us towards taking certain actions. But what if there is a code behind the button that the collective unconscious can't like bypass? So when she presses the button to click time, there's a code that runs in the computer that she doesn't know is there. And so like the way the collective unconscious is guiding the ego, it's guiding us towards taking certain actions. What if the planet, like the actual substructure of the universe itself, there's certain numbers that guide the collective unconscious to act in certain ways with certain principles associated with certain numbers? Like, I don't know. And what if that's like, the code that goes through when she clicks the numbers? Like, even she's unaware of this. So when things always like go back to Saturn, and when it's associated with numbers, like even the collective unconscious doesn't know why it's doing it, but it's doing it. But yeah, like this is more speculative than before. But yeah, what we've done so far, which I think is reasonable to say, is that the collective unconscious, it uses stars, and like it associates celestial objects with stories and myths, and it helps it remember concepts that are beneficial for mankind, prosperity and vitality, through over long periods of time, not just one life. So, but yeah, what if there's the code that goes through it? So I think the number associated with it is 6. Associated with this realm, with time, entropy, cause and effect, with the matrix, the number associated with it is 6. So this is going to get very conspiratorial, just full disclosure. Like, I already know. So let me just go back to my scripts and let me load it back up. So at the top of Saturn, there is a hexagonal shape. Hexagon has 6 sides with 6, as you can see here, 6 interior triangles, and each one of those triangles has 3 angles of 60 degrees. Saturn is the 6th planet from the Sun. Saturday, which is based on Saturn, is the 6th day of the week. Hexagon could be represented as a black cube. The Jewish have the Tefillin, which contains ancient scrolls and prayers. As you can see, these geezers got this there. But also Islam has the Kaaba, which is the black cube in Mecca, where Muslims take a pilgrimage to at least once in their life, if they can. In both these cases, these rituals emphasize the historical importance of either a document or location, and shows the significance of tradition and lineage, and implies there is a definite start to things which can't be meddled with, similar to the Saturnian law of cause and effect. You could think of the black cube as the matrix everything happens within. Again, it's also interesting how this hexagon, which is 6, it's also interesting how the carbon, 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons, and carbon is the basis for all life. It's like the thing that it allows for things to get connected to other things the most. It's like the connector, like the best connector thing. So it's the basis for all life. And if you're life, it means you're going to die. Like, it means you're subject to the laws of Saturn. It means you're subject to the laws of entropy. So like carbon is the element of the fallen world, and it's carbon is the element of the fallen world, and again 666. It's related to the idea of Satan, like 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons. That's 666. 666 ideas that related to the idea of Satan. Is interesting how the idea of the angel of the fallen world also sounds like Saturn, like the collective unconscious magnates towards that again. And then this is also interesting. Think about pure carbon, pure this fallen world matter molecule. Like, pure carbon is a diamond, and just think about like this is crazy. Like like a diamond represents materialism. It means like when people say like it's like the highest symbol of you are too like invested in worldly possessions. Like you need to think more spiritual, because like just like really think about it, because like even gold, yeah, it is like seeing like people see it as materialistic, but there is like at least some sort of like spiritual side to gold. And there is none to diamonds. Like there's no spiritual side to diamonds, like really. And it's all like, it's very like, it's just weird. And it's weird how our collective unconscious again has selected for the diamond to be, which is carbon, to be seen as the thing that represents and symbolizes materialism and the fallen world, and being concerned with worldly possessions. It's just so interesting, because because carbon is base for all life, which is the material world, and it's just the psyche ends up selecting that exact thing to be what represents the most materialistic you can get. Because I said, like even gold, like Chinese, Indian mythology, like gold is like, even Jesus, he got gold at birth. Like it's connected to the spiritual world. But yeah, diamonds is weird. Like it's one of those selections that you just can't ignore. Also interesting, blah blah blah. But yeah, then again, the Star of David, hexagon. All the Abrahamic religions value historicity, but also promise a transcendental afterlife. This is humanity at a high level of understanding of time. You can see how it's become more abstract from the hunter who kills to fulfill short-term needs in communities, to Abrahamic religions where the conception of sacrifice has become much more comprehensive, just as the societies they presided over grew. This teaching, conscious or unconscious, seems to have been effective since these religions have outlasted empires, and although modern society would hate to deny it, or would like to deny it, our modern science and the world we live in today is based off these religions. Again, so we like to think, we're better than these people, but all of this understanding of time and risk and sacrifice has had to be crystallized through all these methods that the collective unconscious has been used, through myths, through rituals. It had to be properly crystallized until it's a part of us, just as the way legs are part of us. So yeah, like we wouldn't say we owe, but we can't ignore the religion's role in, or like Abrahamic religion's role in getting to this point. So today, the company that manages the most assets in the world, 9 trillion, is BlackRock, and they use a practically all-knowing software called Aladdin. This company, if anyone were to rule the world, it would be them. The understanding of we're just at such an abstract conception of the ideas of risk, and it's like this computer is literally looking at historical data to plot out trends in the future, to base decisions off of. Like the amount of understanding of risk and sacrifice and past and present and future is just at its absolute pinnacle in these type of companies and in this company. And yeah, they use this software it's called Aladdin. It's interesting. Aladdin's also the name of a crater on one of Saturn's moon. Bit of a stretch also, but BlackRock could be seen as a black cube. Again, this is a bit of a stretch, I won't lie, but it is interesting to note this. So BlackRock could be seen as a black cube, and it's interesting how that's the symbol of the chief institution of the day, is like a Saturnian symbol, just as the chief financial institution of Romans' day, the symbol associated with them was the temple of Saturn. It's just interesting how it always goes back. So the chief financial institution of today, their symbol could be seen as a Saturnian symbol, what like they associate with, and the chief financial institution of the Romans, the treasury, where they stored their gold. And they owned the world back in that day. They owned this physical world back in their day, just as BlackRock basically does now. Their symbol was the Saturn. It was literally it was based at the temple of Saturn. So it's just amazing how that works. And so yeah, just to conclude, I don't think any of this is planned. All of this is speculation. But yeah, I think what is happening is just the collective unconscious is just like implanting things over time, like along the way, and it magnates towards things. And although as individuals we don't see it, it's doing it nonetheless. It's doing it, yeah. And like I heard, there's a statistic that I heard that I think like will help bring the point, like make it seem more concrete. Like we consciously can process 40 megabits of information per second. We can our unconscious processes 40,000 megabits per second. And I'm not sure if those are the exact numbers, but the ratio is about that. So like, just think about how crazy that is. Like, we're basically going through life not knowing most of what we're going through, like not at least being aware of it consciously. So that's us consuming the information. So surely, like, we must also be producing, and when people are writing literature, when they're producing things, I don't know, they're also planting things unconsciously. That sounds more crazy, I know, but I mean, think about it. If it works the inwards way, I don't understand why it wouldn't work the outwards way over a long periods of time. And yeah, it's just worth that is worth thinking about, that we process 40,000 megabits unconsciously, whereas our conscious mind can only process 40 megabits. So that's going in. What about what's going out? And again, all of this is interesting. Like, if you believe it or not, at least we could say it's interesting. This is a thought experiment. And yeah, hopefully YouTube don't ban this. So goodbye. It's Caves Light. Peace.